Hello and welcome to another episode of Sideline at the Quarries, FC Clifton Hill's web series of interviews with key figures in the world of football, many, if not all of whom, have a link back to FC Clifton Hill. Welcome to our second episode, and it is thanks to Nelson Alexander, a real estate icon in Melbourne's north and has been helping people buy, sell, rent and lease properties in the northern suburbs for more than 45 years. And of course, there is an FC Clifton Hill connection. Robbie Ennis, former Socceroo and a very successful auctioneer with Nelson Alexander, and he played 5 seasons at FC Clifton Hill after returning from his career in the UK with Portsmouth. Our other broadcast partner for this series of chats is Tradie Marketing, apparel and promotions specialising in the trade industry, owned by Vicky Govic and the Govic family, of course, a big part of the club. All right, so we're going to delve into the world of coaching today with a really close connection to FC Clifton Hill and Quarries Reserve. And it's with great pleasure I welcome Ivan Jolic to the program. Ivan, great to have you on.
Pleasure to be here, Teo. Thanks for having me.
So before we get into where you currently are in the world of coaching, I want to go back down memory lane to begin with, because FC Clifton Hill is close to your heart. Give us a little bit of your background and your involvement with the club for those of you whose years didn't cross over with the time you were there.
Look, it was a really, really good time for me and a very momentous time for me because we were living in Clifton Hill and at the time I was looking to get into full-time coaching. Before that, I was working as an engineer in the corporate world, and just as I was hoping to make that transition, Michael and the family gave me an opportunity out at the football club, and it's pretty much where I got my first real professional coaching job. So I did a bit of stuff with the youth there as well as the seniors. So really memorable times. It's been a long journey since there, but some fun times and even nicer when it's in your local area and community.
Now, my understanding is it was an under-11 boys team that you first started out with in 2010. And there are some fairly significant players that came through that class that have gone on to play at NPL level and even A-League level. Tell us about some of the players you worked with when they were only really just starting out their football journey.
Yeah, look, it was a really good group, and I was doing some private coaching, and we decided that instead of doing one session a week, we'd do a few sessions a week. So Michael was really keen to grow his junior base, and I was keen to continue to coach there and have more work. So look, we had a really, really good group. Some of the names probably escape me, but there's lots of them I still stay in touch with, or their parents at least, who are playing NPL. A couple even had opportunities at A-League level out at Victory and so forth. So it was a really good group, a very technical group, really committed bunch of family and players. And, it's always wonderful. That's one of the things and the joys of coaching juniors. They start in a really humble surround of Clifton Hill on a cold Tuesday, Wednesday night, and then Saturday or Sunday morning, we're all putting up the goals, and then they go on to represent in semi-professional and professional environments. It's one of the most fulfilling things as a coach that you can enjoy and experience.
And you mentioned the start of your coaching journey. I mean, when you were finished with your playing career in the NSL, did you envisage yourself as a coach? Did you see a pathway? And what exactly was at the back of your mind as to how you would go about it? And then when you started the journey, did you envisage it would take you where it has?
Absolutely not, Teo. It's actually always reflect, and we've had lots of time to reflect in the last couple of months. And my journey was as a player. I was a humble player in the old NSL, and I retired probably a little earlier because I just started to lose a bit of passion and could see my transition into the corporate world being a hell of a lot more lucrative and how could I say successful for me. So coaching definitely wasn't on the horizon for me post my playing. I had a 2 or 3 year hiatus where I really wanted to, see what I could achieve, as an engineer and as a national business development manager, both at a place called Crievac in the northern suburbs and Vizzy also in the northern suburbs. And that was fabulous. It taught me a hell of a lot of skills that, funnily enough, I seem to use now in coaching, and have held me in good stead. But after a little while, I just worked out that the corporate game as enjoyable as it was, like I was only 32 at the time, and I thought, bugger, I've got another 30 odd years of this. And I don't know that I had the passion to be, in the corporate game for that long. And ultimately, my advice for everyone is to follow your passion. And, the light ignited, the football light, and slowly but surely I embarked on a journey. And I never thought I'd be a full-time professional coach and be at a World Cup, but luckily enough to experience that. And, I took my time and educated it myself, invested in myself, and made errors. Michael will tell you, I made plenty of errors in my first job there. And ultimately, though, they're learning moments. And I was always humble enough to self-reflect, take the criticism and try and grow. And ultimately, I still have the same philosophy. And, it's probably one of the reasons why you can survive in such a cutthroat industry that long. It's that continual self-reflection, trying to reinvent and improve yourself.
You've probably seen in the last couple of weeks a lot of former Socceroos, a lot of former professional Australian players are using the downtime to weigh in and sort of give their thoughts on the direction that the game is going. And one of the big things that the public and media and fans always come out of these discussions and say is, how do we get these people more involved in football? And I suppose, given your own experience as an ex-professional who then went to humble sort of beginnings in your coaching career, what advice would you have for players that have either recently finished or have been out of playing for some time, but have maybe the currency of being a former professional themselves, whether it's NSL era or A-League era, who are now thinking, I need to start this coaching journey. I don't have any badges. I don't have a club. Where do I go? What do I do? What insight could you impart to them, given how you've been able to take your career and, as you say, go to professional level, A-League, national teams? I'm not suggesting you give advice to the golden generation players, but any former pro who now wants to be a coach and has maybe used this downtime to reflect on how they're involved in the game, what are some of the important things that you did to help you go from community to serious to professional to international?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's actually a really good question. And the thing that I can say about my journey was that it had to be intrinsic, and with the golden generation, we've all been willing and urging them on to get involved for many a year. And it's probably better that they didn't get involved when someone else forces them or encourages them to do it. It's got to come from within. So at the start of the journey, it's got to come from within. And I'll also always preface that it's a long journey, and it ain't a pretty journey getting to the top of this game. It's cutthroat, and you need to set yourself some real long-term goals, but understand that they're positive fantasies. We all fantasize about lifting the World Cup, lifting the Asian Cup, lifting, a UEFA Champions League. Absolutely. And so you should have that fantasy. The only thing is you must be a realist. And when you embark on, realising your positive fantasy, you've got to have short and medium-term goals. And most coaches probably haven't got the intrinsic motivation to start with or the grit and determination required. So when you do it, it's all in. Start with educating yourself, because all around the world, everyone will say, irrespective of the industry you work in, education's the start point. You must start to educate yourself and just be patient. And the other thing is, it ain't as lucrative as people think in the early stages. And it might never even become lucrative for many, many coaches. And they just need to be able to accept that. And the other thing is, as you're embarking on a journey, you need to make sure that, the people around you, your loved ones, are supportive, because the early part of coaching and development, the best way for me to describe it is it's an antisocial environment. You're working in hours when most people are at home having dinner. You're working on a Saturday and Sunday when most people are socialising. So it's likened to owning a restaurant, the early days. And when you get into the professional ranks, there's an old saying that football never sleeps, and I can only tell you it is so true. It never sleeps, and a lot of it's because we don't get our work-life balance right. But long journey. Set yourself short to medium term goals to achieve your positive fantasy, and start. The baseline is starting with education. Try and get as much experience as possible. You're never beyond or above youth development or taking a basic team at Clifton Hill, for example. I started there. Last week's guest started there. You know what I mean? He's coaching at Arsenal. So it's the experience and the humbleness.
One thing I wanted to ask, because I'm sure every coach is different, but how much, when you're giving instructions, whether it's in a training session or whether it's one-on-one, whether it's a match, halftime team talk or shouting from the touchline, I'd love to know, how often do you find yourself going back to your playing career to form the basis of your knowledge and your instruction that you're about to give, recalling a moment in a game or recalling something that one of your coaches said to you when you were playing, as opposed to what you may have learnt during your coach education, what you may have learned from other coaches, or simply recalling previous instances when you were already a coach and having seen repeat patterns and things like that. I suppose what I'm trying to tap into here, the value of being an ex-professional player, how often do you find yourself recalling scenarios, instances, lessons, learnings from your playing days as opposed to from your coaching journey?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I think in the early days when you're not really sure of yourself, you probably do hit the repeat button on a lot of things because it gives you comfort. But when you hit the repeat button, a lot of the time you do it because you probably don't know yourself as a coach. And I say that a lot of the behaviour, a lot of the team culture, a lot of team building framework that I do, it's all come out of one thing. That's your values and beliefs, right? Your values and beliefs of you as a childhood and so forth. It's who you are. And what you'll find is that the best coaches can bring their values and beliefs to life. So in effect, they're coming to work to be themselves. Once you start looking at YouTube or, trying to recite a coach who you liked, and if it doesn't resonate, if those values and beliefs don't resonate with you, but you're just trying to replicate something because you think it's good, because that's what a championship winning coach done, are you doomed for failure? So that's why the journey of, from youth development coach or, low level amateur coach all the way through to becoming a professional, that's why you need the time. It's all about knowing who you are and what you stand for. And once you've got an understanding of yourself, then you can start, because you've got a clear picture of who you are and the values you hold, the beliefs you have, then all of a sudden you can start to impart those on a team. And when you are talking from within, it's a lot easier to convince, because in the end, Teo, coaching's the art of, influencing. All I have to do is influence my stakeholders, the players, the coaches, maybe the media, and it's always easier if you're just being yourself. But what takes a long time is understanding who you are and what those values and beliefs are. So when you see a team, that I coach play football, they're my values and beliefs coming to the fore. Whereas if you just, if you're an ex-player and you just think you can, I've been around Jose Mourinho. If you try and be Jose Mourinho, that's doomed for failure, because Jose Mourinho is Jose Mourinho and he builds his teams around his values and beliefs. You can't build your team and get them playing like Jose Mourinho's if that's not in your gut. And that's what I've learned through my journey.
I wanted to ask about, before we get to the Matildas and the World Cup, I wanted to ask about your experiences in the A-League environment, particularly running plans through pressure, because regardless of whether you're a top team that's going for the title or you're a struggling team that's trying to make the top six, putting your plans and your ideas through pressure, putting them through testosterone-fueled young men, means that the message doesn't sometimes get through. Tell us about some of your experiences coaching at A-League level.
Yeah, it's an interesting one and it's a good one. And one thing I've learned through experience, Teo, is the thing you control the most is a process. And I say that, I spend more of my time trying to work out what is best practice process. What does a weekly workflow look like? What does best practice look like is in coaching and so forth. So you're always tinkering with that, because I'm so process driven because I think that's the only thing you can really control. And if you worry too much about the outcome, even if you get a positive outcome, you can't repeat it because you're unsure how you actually achieved it. So managing the process is a real big part of my coaching. And I think just continually look to evolve your weekly workflow. You know, what is best practice? And then you've got your analysis, then you've got your training design, then you've got a match day. And you're continually looking for some consistency, but something that resonates with your values and belief and that you're comfortable will deliver you an outcome. And if you can show that consistency and belief in your process, I think then teams and players will buy into that because it's repeatable. And to be fair to you, I'd say players are creatures of habit and they like consistency. So having a unified and a consistent process is definitely one that's helped me achieve what I have with the teams, irrespective of being around talented players or not. As you know, I was at Melbourne City in the first couple of years of my A-League experience, and they were a top shelf team with top shelf players and a big budget. I went to Central Coast Mariners, and the budget was significantly lower, and as a result, the talent pool isn't there. I'll be honest, I think I coached better at Central Coast Mariners, not getting the outcome, and I learnt more in that experience, because I really got the ability to fine-tune best practice processes, because we needed to work even harder to get a win. Whereas at Melbourne City, you work extremely hard, but you've then got Aaron Moy, Harry Nevio, Thomas Sorensen in your team. Right? You know that they're going to come up with some magic. At the Mariners, we had to work extremely hard. That was our competitive advantage. And I spent a lot of time there fine-tuning, my process.
So one advantage you would have had when you went into the Matildas environment pre-World Cup was that flying around the country with A-League teams every weekend, medium to long flights, hotels, living out of home, that sort of environment is pretty standard practice. So that side of things you would have been totally ready for. Tell us about that Matildas World Cup experience from a football point of view, whether it was crash courses on learning about the players, whether it was learning about opponents. How much of that did you have to adjust to when you signed up for that role and came on board with really a sprint period to prepare for a World Cup?
Well, it was a sprint, and again, it tested the staff. You know, we had to come in with a whole new game playing style, a whole new approach to the way we build teams, run teams. All of those things were new, so we literally. It was a crash course, and it was extremely challenging, and but exhilarating. You know, you're with the best, some of the best athletes in the world, and to get their buy-in and their energy was a fascinating journey. It was hard work. You know, I took a photo on day one of our trip, and let me tell you, by the time I finished, I took a photo of myself, and I looked like I was 75 years old. You know, it's tough work, but again, you know, you do it for the love, for the passion, for the ride of a win. You know, doesn't matter what happens to me, I can always take to the grave a winning moment at a World Cup, from a World Cup. And it's hard to describe that, but that's what gives you the fuel and the energy to wake up the next day and go again. You know, we had to work a lot smarter than we would in an A-League environment where you have a 17-week pre-season and then you become very, very picky on, and you have an ability to prioritise. You know, what I know we want to achieve this in the training session or in this week camp, but what is going to give us the most value? And we worked with a really, really good staff. Loved the staff there. And everyone worked efficiently and effectively, but they were organised. So it was helter-skelter, as you say, but well worth it, and a lot of learnings came out of it. And to be fair, the players actually delivered quite well in terms of their understanding of the playing style and the evolution of since we took over, they actually delivered quite well.
And in total contrast, instead of a sprint, it's now a marathon to the Olympics because it's been moved by a year, possibly longer. So again, a totally different way of having to adjust. And I imagine that for a lot of the Matildas players, I mean, overnight, we're recording this on the 26th, the Women's Super League got abandoned for the rest of the year. When we spoke to Joe Montemuro on this program last time, we were under the impression the season was going to resume, same as the men's. It means that there are professionals that are playing all around the world who don't know where their next contract is, and probably the Matildas is more important than ever, because while their club future may be up in the air, their national team future at least should be somewhat secure. So how challenging is that going to be, do you think, readjusting to the moving of a major tournament, which for so long would have been, most players would have had August of 2020 in their diaries and knew exactly where they wanted to be and what they were going to do, and now it's got to move?
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. And like I said, our job's to deliver a process. So our process doesn't necessarily change a hell of a lot. Our priorities change during this period. So we're spending a lot of time with the players on some team building and culture sort of building and leadership type stuff. So management of the team, management of yourself as players and so forth. So we get a huge opportunity to work in that sphere. From a player's point of view, they have planned for a huge tournament, and there's certain players that are coming towards the tail end of their career, and they obviously had plans and so forth. So a lot of players have some reflecting to do also, and we're just there to support them. So we're there to support them. We're there to continue our evolution and our growth as a football team, and we think that this period we can genuinely add value to our team, and we have weekly Zoom meeting where the players have delivered some tasks and had some homework as such, and some team building activities in groups. So we're humming along. The only thing is, as coaches and as players, we love being on the field. We love delivering sessions. They love playing, and there's frustration. But, COVID-19, Teo, it's as frustrating for footballers and coaches as it is for everyone. It's not discriminating, and we just got to get on with it. So we don't sulk. We just sort of say, rightio, if we can't build a team here, we'll build it in this part. And, we've done a huge study of our evolution since Ante and myself took over, and where we're tracking and comparing that to best practice teams. And, the work continues. The only difference is, unfortunately, I can't get on the green stuff. And the players are the same.
Based on what you've said so far, I don't want to preempt your response to my next question, but I think I can guess what it may be. Are there any or many differences at all coaching a women's team as opposed to coaching a men's or a boys' team?
Yeah, look, there are. There definitely are. And and it's been a very, very, very good experience for me, because I came out of youth football with boys and followed pretty much that trajectory, or their development and growth, all the way to performance senior men, and then had a stint in the young Socceroos in the under-20s there, who took some boys, or young men, not boys, to an Asian Cup. And then all of a sudden, we've gone from there, where we had certain, processes and a playing style and all of those things, and management of players and staff a certain way, and we then transition that into the women's game. And we've had to grow. We've had to evolve. We've had to redirect in others. And the main one, Teo, that I'm happy to share with everyone is, with females and women, I've had to find a bit more of my inner self and connect with the players, to connect with the players a bit more on an emotional or a more personal level. Whereas when you're coaching in elite men, it's purely transactional. You're there, do the job, yep, come on, and it's work. But that's what they want. They actually don't want to get any deeper involved with you on an emotional level, whereas females generally will. And I've found that to be a very, very beneficial thing for me as a coach. And I've actually enjoyed it. I've really, really enjoyed it, and I have some terrific relationships with with female athletes in the Matildas. And, you know, we're getting the best out of it. So you can get the best out of men certain way, and now we're seeing that we're getting the best out of women, connecting with them on a different way. Outside of that, the female athletes are just as competitive. Their ability to train at an intensity has been incredible. Like, it surprised me initially because I had never had experience of that. Their desire to learn and their thirst or an appetite for winning a game of football or learning, it's just the same. It's just the same. We do the same sessions with men as we do with the women. So, you know, I've enjoyed it thoroughly. And it's actually probably allowed me to go into an area of my own development that I hadn't had to go into. And that's that, you know, that emotional, the thoughts and feelings area.
And not so much on that note, but I'd like to pose the hypothetical to you. If you were to take the net sum of your experience coaching in the A-League and coaching in national teams, let's just say, for argument's sake, the only team that's taking the field for the rest of 2020 is a junior team back at community level, because all other tiers of the game are still on hold, but juniors are back at Clifton Hill. What key lessons would you take as a coach back to the community level and implement, having learnt what you have? How much of the elite side of things can you bring back with you and implement with players that are either learning the game or players that don't have the same level of skill or have the same level of fitness?
A couple of things, and that is that, you know, and again, you know, coming back to community level, but, you know, with the view that we want to produce Socceroos and Matildas, I would say that our players generally that are coming through need to build a stronger mentality. And that's not so much, you know, my experience with the Matildas, but more younger players coming through into youth national teams and youth A-League and W League teams. I think there needs to be a bit more emphasis on, you know, building grit and resilience. And I also think that our players genuinely need to train at a higher intensity more often, and we need to continue to probably crank up the conditioning side of the game. I think we've probably, you know, let that slip a little. And there's probably a multitude of reasons, but, you know, when I compare us to the rest of the world at youth level and young players coming through, I'd say that, you know, the best practice young players coming through, they are mentally resilient, far more resilient than, let's say, younger Australian players trying to break into the professional ranks. And I'd say that they're a lot more robust physically. So that'd probably be the two main areas.
And then how much of that is educating coaches and educating them on how to lead their groups, how to educate their own players, how to instill those lessons? Because that's one area I know that you're passionate as well, coach education. So how much of that is the responsibility of, we don't have a national technical director at the moment, but how much of that is the responsibility of the incoming one to make sure that that's the blueprint from which all our coaches at grassroots level are learning from?
Yeah, it is. It's really, really important, Teo, because, you know, the reality is, for the best way for us to share knowledge and share information is through the coach education stream. And suffice to say, you know, the coach education team at Sean Douglas and Anthony Frost, I'm in regular dialogue with, you know, and they're not only in regular dialogue with the Matildas technical staff, but and they're very aware of our shortcomings at international tournaments across from under 17s all the way through to seniors. And their job then is to say, rightio, there's a common theme here. How do we now build that into our coach education platforms and then bring those to life with our C, B, A licensed coaches and courses, and obviously, you know, community coaching courses. So it's making sure that your coach education arm is in direct dialogue with those who are at the coalface and it's us coaches at the coalface. You know, we had to go to the World Cup and play Norway. And I know what I saw when we played Norway at grass level. You know, I saw where the progress the Italians had made. Well, you know, Leah Blaney went to the Asian Cup and saw what the North Koreans, the South Koreans, the Japanese are doing, right? You don't lose by the margins we did because of poor coaching or poor systems and poor processes. No, there's a deeper underlying issue. So we communicate back, and then it's the responsibility of the coach ed team to bring that to life via the coach education platforms and courses.
And to sort of finish on the elite side of football, we don't have a return date for the A-League yet, but we hope the season will be finished. Obviously, the W League is perhaps benefiting from being in a long off-season, and international football, we just have to wait and see. Have you looked into the crystal ball and had any thoughts about where football's going, what you might like to see done differently, where COVID could perhaps be a positive force of change, or do we just need to get back on the field and then worry about how it looks once we're back?
Well, I'll let the experts, the golden generation, they can discuss those things. But I just want to get back on track. And I love coaching. I love being with players. I love session design, executing sessions, you know, getting in shorts and a pair of boots. That's what I love, Teo. I don't spend too much time in a crystal ball. You know, the powers that be at the FFA and the A-League clubs, you know, they know what needs to be done during this period. And I know that there's lots of steering committees and so forth discussing where the game should go, both on the men's and female side, boys, girls. So we leave that to them, and we're called upon. Don't get me wrong, we're not, you know, we're not part of these discussions. I'll be on a Zoom meeting next week, but you know, I can say that, you know, the people behind the scenes are working tirelessly to continue to grow the game, and hopefully we can take it to another level when we all do resume. But for now, I just want to see the boys and girls back on the park, playing and kicking a ball.
And on that note, I wouldn't mind finishing with a couple of questions about Clifton Hill again, particularly comparing your time at the club 10 years ago to where the club is now. My understanding is there was only one women's team at the club in 2010. Now it's at the point where there are multiple teams. They seem to be growing the number of female participants. What do you think that says about the club, and how does that contrast with what they were trying to do or trying to start when you were there coaching, you know, a couple of nights a week?
No, look, they're always, when I started there, to be honest, Michael was very keen to grow the junior base. You know, before my time there, obviously there was probably more of the focus was on the senior teams, but Michael probably was a bit of visionary to say, you know what, I need kids. I need to get kids, and I need to have kids. A good part of Melbourne, socio-economically, there was always going to be the growth and the for female football, and he seemed to be ahead of the curve that way. So I'm not surprised that Michael's youth development programs have grown, and I'm even less surprised that he was a visionary to sort of say, well, you know what, I can really accelerate this growth by providing a platform and an opportunity for girls to play their football in that area. And it's lovely to see. I spoke to him last week, and I was really proud of where the club is, in particular on that female side, where they've got, you know, multiple teams now, even I think 3 senior teams. It's terrific, and that seems to be in line with the global growth of the game. So the ability now for Michael to provide a pathway for girls from, you know, young ages all the way through to the, you know, the WNPL and maybe into the W League is fabulous. And from all reports, he runs a pretty good program and has some really good people involved there. And knowing how passionate Helen is and her, you know, and her contacts in the game, I'm sure they'd be running one of the better programs in Victoria.
And not to put you on the spot, but if you can pinpoint one particular favourite memory from your time at Clifton Hill, does anything still spring to the front of your mind, whether it was something big or something small that is perhaps your go-to reference point when you think about your time at the club?
The reason I took the phone call, to be honest, Teo, and I've agreed to come on because I had a really good experience there. And the reason I say it was a good experience was, one, Michael provided me an opportunity, but it was really the club as a community and as a family. So, my fondest memories are walking to the ground on a Saturday at 12 o'clock. You get there and, the Tarikos family, along with, a posse of other family and friends, working tirelessly and volunteering their time to host people that are coming there. The Heros was going, they were running the canteen, they were stocking that, they were, and it was, they don't get anything out of it financially. It's not a corporate business. And they only ever wanted to make people feel welcome. And all they wanted to achieve was that people left Clifton Hill saying, that was a good feed. That's a really, really nice club. I really enjoy going to Clifton Hill. And I was always made to feel welcome. And I had 3 young girls whilst I was in Clifton Hill. And I'd go and watch. If I wasn't coaching, I'd grab myself a Heros or a Suva. My kids would run around the back in the playground. There'd be a game of football. And it'd be just a terrific environment. And my fondest memory is just the feeling you got from going on Quarry Hill there. And it was lots of fun and, really fond memories for my family and the goodwill that the club sort of had as an energy.
Well, they'll be hoping to be back out on the field doing that in the next couple of months. I guess we'll have to wait and see, but fingers crossed that we are getting closer and closer to more Saturday afternoons like that being possible.
I hope so. And I'm sure, of all the people, Michael's dad would be bloody spewing about this because he loved to bloody run around and organise everyone. It gave him a huge purpose, and he was so proud. And I think that's wonderful to see.
And last one that I wanted to ask is about your own coach mentoring program. Tell us a little bit about that initiative, the name, what it does, and also sort of your mission statement and motivation behind running it.
Well, the motivation was simple. I got in youth development and loved seeing players grow. And then I got into coach education. I took really good energy and derived some wonderful times from seeing coaches grow. And then, when I got into, obviously I've got some decent experience and I just wanted the capacity and the ability to share that experience. And whilst I was in the A-League, I was extremely busy. And then, there was a period there where I was in between. I get a lot of phone calls from young players and young coaches who are all wanting some advice and wanting to have a chat. And ultimately, so I formalised that whole process, and I started a little side business that it's a lot of fun for me. It's called Elite Football Mentoring, and I've got a little client base that I work with. It's been running for about 18 months, and it's all about seeing people grow and just providing them a safe environment for them to actually share their journey and hopefully expose them to best practice. And we do some goal setting and we put a process in place to achieve those goals. And I've seen some players and coaches grow, which is fantastic. It gives me a shot in the arm and thoroughly enjoy it. And during COVID and during, periods of, when I'm in international football, it's allowed me to continue to do it. And I'll continue to do it because it's a really welcome distraction to the day-to-day work that I do when I am in international football. So, love doing it. Enjoyed it, and looking forward to continuing my journey in that space for the short time at least.
Well, Ivan, thank you for the chat. It's been great to have you on Sideline at the Quarries. I wish you well for the rest of 2020. Obviously, 2021 is going to be even bigger now because that's when the Olympics will be held. So good luck on that road. And in the meantime, clearly you're still heavily invested in terms of both time, emotion, profession, in football and in coaching, and hopefully that journey is a good one. And as you say, it involves getting back out on the field sooner rather than later.
Let's hope so for everyone. And really just want to thank you, Teo, and FC Clifton Hill for giving me the opportunity to come on and share some stories of my journey, which started at the football club.
No, your answers about Clifton Hill in particular, so enjoyable to hear your pretty vivid recollection of everything that was going on in your time at the club. So we really appreciate that. And thank you once again for being our guest tonight.
Absolute pleasure, and good luck with it all.
Big thanks to Ivan Jolic there, our guest on Sideline at the Quarries. Of course, brought to you by Nelson Alexander Real Estate, more than 45 years in Melbourne's northern suburb, and also tradie marketing apparel, specialising in the workforce. Well, that's it for our second episode of Sideline at the Quarries. Make sure you like and share. We hope you're enjoying the series, and we look forward to speaking to you again with our next instalment. That's it for now.